How will Indiana be affected by the federal shutdown? Are Hoosiers who use the health insurance marketplace about to see a big spike in their premiums? And why is Purdue ending a popular grant program for low-income students? From the studios of WFYI, it's Indiana Week in Review for the week ending October 3, 2025.
Indiana Week in Review is produced by WFYI in association with Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations.
This week, federal employees across Indiana have been furloughed or forced to work without pay because of the federal government shutdown. Indiana has about 24,000 civilian federal employees, most working in areas such as law enforcement, transportation security, and Veterans Affairs.
The Minton Capehart Federal Building in downtown Indianapolis houses regional offices for agencies such as the Social Security Administration and the IRS, as well as an immigration court. The city is also home to the Defense Finance and Accounting Service. During a government shutdown, many federal employees are told not to work, but people in jobs that are deemed essential are required to work without pay. Law enforcement and air traffic control fall into that category. Indiana Governor Mike Braun commented on the situation Wednesday. He was in Congress in 2019 during the longest shutdown of the first Trump administration.
It's worse now than it was when I was there 6 years ago. And sadly, they need to get their act together and do budgets, do the simple thing we all do as households, businesses, municipalities, and states. Don't spend more than you take in.
Furloughs during government shutdowns are usually temporary, but this time could be different as the White House has told federal agencies to prepare for permanent layoffs.
Should Hoosiers working for the federal government be worried about not having a job when the shutdown ends? It's the first question for our Indiana Week in Review panel. Political strategist Elise Shrock, Republican Mike O'Brien, Jill Sheridan, managing editor at WFYI, and Niki Kelly, editor-in-chief of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. I'm Jon Schwantes, host of Indiana Lawmakers and the interim host of Indiana Week in Review. Elise, we're only a day or two into this, and my brain is already shut down trying to make sense of it. Let's let you take a crack at it. What's going on here?
Sure. Well, you know, at the top of the show, you said, should Hoosiers be worried if they have a job at the end of this shutdown, which we don't know when that's going to come. And I think everything just feels more tenuous than any one of these has ever been. And we just have to look at what the administration has been saying from the top down. Since January, we have seen the administration, the Trump administration, kind of vilify these bureaucratic jobs, always trying to cut these jobs, looking for any opportunity to kind of lay off folks, lay them off, then realize, wait, we actually need government to run, recall some of them back. So, and then we heard him say after his, 70-minute authoritarian tirade to our top generals that this is intentional. This is intentional to make things harder, to take away programs that would, quote, help Democrats because they like these programs. It's political. This is a scary time to be a federal worker, and it's a scary time for our Hoosier federal workers, and it's never good when we have people out of work.
Well, as you point out, shutdowns are not uncommon, but this is different in many ways. We have a president who seems willing to dispense with the norms of the office or perhaps even federal law regarding some of these issues, or at least test federal law on some of these issues. Also, the last time this came around, we didn't have AI generating ads sort of lampooning the other side with, some would say, non-traditional. Is this different fundamentally?
It all feels different. I mean, none of it feels like it's working. It's Congress's failure to, come up with a budget. It's really what this exercise, I guess it's two reactions, right? If you're a federal employee, yes, you are concerned, of course, like anybody would be. If you believe you're at risk of being laid off. So that's one thing. The other thing is, no one really notices when the government shuts down, at least for a minute, right? Because the essential things keep going. The non-essential things you don't even really see, permitting and, maybe your passport slows down or, things that are not critical. Things that are critical can continue, and things that aren't, you don't pay attention to and you don't notice. And the problem with that, and what both parties are doing right now, and Democrats are failing as well as the Republicans at finding any leverage. So where do you find leverage in that? If the public's not paying attention because they didn't really notice and not being affected by it, the universe of federal employees relative to everyone else is small. How do you create political leverage to get to a deal? And that is what is different, because there doesn't seem to be any leverage other than the Democrats are harping on Medicaid expansion and healthcare subsidies, and the White House's lever seems to be, we're going to fire hundreds of thousands of people and eliminate all these programs.
Agencies,
and who's going to blink?
he puts it.
Yeah, and who's going to blink first? And we don't know, because there doesn't seem to be a willingness on either side to come to an agreement.
Well, when do we get that sort of incentive to resolve this? It seems to me that there are three ways to look at who's affected here, and we've already touched on this. You have the average Hoosier, you have federal employees who live in Indiana and may or may not have a job when this is done, and then politicians, how their stock either rises or falls. Let's take them in that order. If, in fact, people have to hurt and start calling their representation in Washington before this is resolved, when do we start seeing that? Not in the short term, but we've also heard of WIC benefits, SNAP benefits, some of these things. If there isn't a resolution in October, maybe we do start seeing an interruption in benefits.
Well, I think when people start having their lives being impacted, and it ultimately will impact, all Hoosiers, whether they're federal government employees, whether, there's somebody that's looking to get Social Security benefits, when those people really start feeling, I'm going on a flight, next week, and I'm really hoping, because I remember last time during the shutdown, a lot of federal employees were calling in because they weren't, getting paychecks and just calling in sick. So I got my fingers crossed, but, when people start getting impacted, and that's, of course, who is going to be impacted, everybody in their everyday lives, that's when people maybe are, paying more attention and really being like, let's try to come to a compromise. But again, seeing how long the last federal government shutdown happened for 35 days, and the last significant one anyway in 2018, 2019, and where we were, in those years pre-pandemic and where we are now as far as being able to come to a compromise.
Governor's right, though. We're also much deeper in debt than we were, and in an accelerated way. I mean, it's $1 trillion every 6 months. I mean, what are we going to do about that?
Right, how are we going to balance that?
That raises an issue, though. When the governor met with reporters this week, he talked about this being a lesson of sorts. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but for the state to learn to live within its means the same way that we would as a family sitting around the kitchen table, or the state. And yet we're reminded that the state is number 3 on the list, a ranking of states that are most reliant on federal money. And I guess if you use the family around the dinner table analogy, if you have the rich uncle or grandfather pumping lots of money into your bank accounts, you can oftentimes balance that budget more easily. Is there some disconnect here?
Well, I mean, when you say most reliant, we don't necessarily mean the state government getting the money. We mean people in Indiana getting money, whether it be Social Security or whether it be transportation dollars, building roads, or things like that. Medicaid is a huge one, that a lot of that federal money is just a pass-through. The state isn't getting the enjoyment of that money. It's just passing through.
But if the feds on the Medicaid front contract, who's left to pick up the pieces?
Yeah, but I mean, that's protected mandatory spending. So we're really only talking about the discretionary side. We're going to see federal parks shut down. No one can go to Yellowstone or, any of those. So that's an example of something they'll see. But I don't know what brings them to the table. On one hand, the Democrats are wanting to continue these ACA health subsidies, but, that's, again, a cost of money. And so then we get back to Governor Braun's point, which is, the federal government has spent more than it takes in for decades, and I don't know how you break out of that.
Well, and we will get to that momentarily, because that is sort of, I think, ground zero in this whole debate. But in the meantime, it seems the messaging is what's up front here. I mean, we're going to be bombarded with various messages online.
Right. You go to any federal agency right now, and they are likely violating the Hatch Act and using political,
that's because the messages that went out,
rhetoric,
we're not here,
saying
can't
the
take your
Democrats
call.
are doing this. So you've got that, which again, a violation of the Hatch Act, and then you need Democrats to be saying, listen, open enrollment is happening. Pricing will go up if we don't fight for these subsidies. And it's not just, to protect Obamacare. It is, the people who are getting these subsidies through Obamacare. Take that away, prices go up for everybody. And it is a messaging issue. And if either side is just saying it's that guy, and not giving Americans a vision for what they're fighting for, then we're going to have a problem on both sides. And I will say I do have a little bit of an issue with Governor Braun's. It's just simple. Don't spend more than you're taking in, and acting like families who are sitting around their dinner table, that's simple for them, because it's not right now. And that's what Democrats are fighting for. They're fighting to make sure that when they are doing that math around their table, their subsidies, their health care, those prices, among other things, aren't going up. I don't know if he can't see us from his helicopter, but that is actually a very hard thing for families to be doing right now.
We give you equal time, but we only have 30 minutes. So, but any response?
I'll keep it quick. The sombreros way.
Well, let me ask you about that. The AI, that is what is new. We have the president. There's one with the Grim Reapers going through Washington, and he's hitting on a cowbell like Will Ferrell. And then you see it's the OMB director at the end when they pull back the cloak. The other one was you already talked about the sombrero and mustache on Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader. Is that helping or hurting?
It's not helping. I mean, it's amusing to some people, but it's also like, I'm not for any of it. I might be for the underlying policy, but I'm rarely for how we're as a party talking about it.
So the cowbell that you have under your chair is not.
That's always there.
That's always there. All right. Well, I promised we'd be talking more about health insurance. Here we go. Health insurance costs for Hoosiers on the federal health care marketplace. We'll be seeing nearly a doubling in the cost of premiums next year if Congress doesn't extend enhanced premium tax credits created during the Biden administration. The issue has become something of ground zero in the debate surrounding the government shutdown.
The enhanced tax credits were introduced in 2021 to help lower the cost of coverage secured through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. They're set to expire this year. Kathy Hempstead, a senior policy officer at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, says a jump in premiums will have a huge impact nationwide.
The Congressional Budget Office has estimated that 4.2 or so million people who are currently on the marketplace will become uninsured.
Hempstead did an analysis for Indiana's costs. She used the example of a 50-year-old making about $47,000 a year on the lowest level plan on the ACA marketplace. That person's premiums are poised to go up anywhere from 83 to 102% next year. That's about $155 a month. Hempstead says the cost increase, coupled with a likely jump in the number of people uninsured, will have an impact on the healthcare system as a whole.
Because we don't have as many people to pay them as we used to. So we're going to eliminate some services, or we're going to shut down this, satellite emergency room or whatever.
Hempstead says rural areas will be hit the hardest.
Mike, sombreros and cowbells notwithstanding, is this the kind of issue that can bring people to the table and bring some sort of agreement?
I don't know how you fix it, because what's happened is what we always thought would happen at the beginning, which is if you don't in a aggressive way require people to participate, that the adverse selection issue where, the 48-year-old who's going to see it go up 100%, 102%, and the 27-year-old who's like, I'm out of here. And so now it creates this spiraling of high cost, smaller group, or there's fewer people in the pool and they cost a lot more money. And so, the mandates are gone unless you live in Vermont or California. So it was only going to ever work if we compelled everybody to be in. And we never had the political willingness to do that, really. And the Republicans didn't have the willingness to make the individual mandate aggressive, and the Democrats never had the willingness to put heavy penalties on it if you didn't.
At least early on, the ACA caused a lot of Democrats to lose office. Is it time for the final word on that and say, we stuck with it and now it's popular?
It is popular. I don't see it going away. I think there were many provisions that keep it popular that you just can't take away. You know, it's the reason that a lot of young people can stay on their parents' insurance and have insurance when they're entering the work field. It is the reason why many women who get pregnant and give birth aren't bankrupt by having children. It's the reason why someone like me with, asthma can get some type of affordable insurance because of a pre-existing condition that doesn't bother me all the time, but could knock me off of insurance. There are just many, many reasons that the passage of Obamacare had to exist, why it is popular, and why many people are healthier because of it. You just can't take that away.
Niki, is there an answer out there? I mean, go back to the bucolic days when everybody talked and had respect for each other. This issue would be tough even in that climate.
I mean, I'm going to focus a little more granularly, which is the discussion now is these additional benefits that would take your costs down. Those, to be fair, were put in after COVID to help in the middle of COVID to help people who were struggling and who had lost their jobs and things like that. So on one hand, yeah, we put them in a temporary basis to help people, and now they're coming off. So part of me feels like that's okay. But then again, 2 months ago, we also had temporary tax credits for rich people that we just had to make permanent because otherwise it would be a tax increase. And that's what Republicans wanted. So I kind of feel they're kind of similar.
And we've often talked in recent weeks about the difficulty of taking away benefits that exist.
Yeah, and I mean, the subsidies did exist from the beginning of the program, and it has grown, like you said, in popularity in Indiana over the last, 3-4 years. I think more than 325,000 people on the ACA marketplace right now. Those subsidies are really crucial for people that are trying to, make that budget work, and when healthcare costs in Indiana continue to increase and we really don't have a lot of answers presented to us, it seems like common sense that we would want to extend some of those benefits to people that are really struggling with healthcare.
Well, time now for viewer feedback. Each week, we pose an unscientific online poll question. This week's question: should lawmakers prioritize extending subsidies for those getting health insurance on the federal marketplace? Yes or no? Simple. Last week's question: should school employees be fired for social media posts about the death of Charlie Kirk that are deemed controversial? 18% of you said yes. 82% of you said no. If you would like to take part in the poll, go to WFYI.org/IWIR and look for the poll. Well, Purdue University this week abruptly ended a statewide program that helped low-income Indiana students go to college. Eric Weddle reports that the move came after the Trump administration canceled the initiative's federal funding as part of the elimination of its DEI programs.
Gear Up is a federal initiative that awards grants to states and universities to prepare low-income students for college. Purdue began its program nearly a decade ago. The university won a $35 million grant last year to continue Gear Up for 7 years. But the U.S. Education Department canceled the grant in early September. Federal officials said elements like diversity, equity, and inclusion training conflict with federal policy. The Indiana program served more than 13,000 students in 10 school districts across the state. It included after-school help, mentoring, and college campus visits. Purdue did not appeal the federal decision.
Jill, what's at risk here for the many students who benefited from this program?
Well, I think, at risk for more than 13,000 students all around the state that were benefiting from this program, getting help from middle school until they were going to college. The students, often low income, often involved in the 21st Century Scholars Program. I mean, the risk is that help, that assistance is gone for those students. And so, again, it's an education issue for the state and for Purdue to not appeal the decision and also to not comment on it, and what's facing a lot of universities in the state right now with questions about the DEI work. And of course, for the last couple years, more of that language, I think, has been inserted into this Gear Up program, but that being a reason to take away this program from the students.
Niki, what do you make of the fact that Purdue sort of said, Oh, the answer is no? Okay. We'll take our.
I mean, I think this is a good example of how we're swinging too far on the DEI thing. There were only a couple times where the DEI stuff came up, like DEI training for some of the teachers. Okay, well, just take that out or eliminate the cultural sensitivity training part. But the fact is, why we're taking away help for low-income students of all races, including white people, because of, some training that doesn't necessarily have to be part of the program. I feel like Purdue could have at least maybe said, hey, could we modify it first? And maybe you guys could get on board with it. As my mom would say, instead they just threw the baby out with the bathwater.
And the reason? I mean, you can infer that they.
Well, no one wants to be on.
Though? I mean,
no one wants to be on the bad side of the Trump administration right now.
Fear of repercussions. Purdue seems to be in a tough spot. They've had in-state tuition freeze for 13, 14 years. They're very proud of that, justifiably so. And they've been partly doing that by getting students who pay more from out of state and even from beyond our borders, national borders, where there's a surcharge. And now the General Assembly last session was saying, hey, we want to focus more on Hoosiers, which means that revenue stream goes. Talk about a rock and a hard place for Purdue and other institutions in its.
Yeah, I mean, this is a signal, right? And this is a very focused example of what happens when all of us, from any background, any demographic, think that just because IRE is focused at Black and brown people, it can't happen to anyone else. And that is a message that is a fear that has been stoked in several different policies, many different policies. That is an umbrella message coming from the Trump administration on anything from immigration to education, and especially when it comes to low income, working people, working Hoosiers. Our fates are tied together. So when you take away opportunities for people, when you offer opportunities to Black and brown people, it benefits our communities as a whole. So, this is a signal, and Purdue has, made the decision to capitulate to it. But they're put in a rock and a hard space, and many of our institutions are.
Is this an aberration or the new normal for our institutions of higher learning in this state?
I'm with Niki. It's you could have modified the program because if you're conservative, let's figure out a way to get kids. I promise you, those 10 school districts weren't in Hamilton County or Hendricks County. My guess is they were in Center Township and Marion County and Lake County and places that, yes, disproportionately probably help minorities because minorities are disproportionately poor. So let's send them to college. Or we cannot help them at all get into school, and now we're back dealing with insurance subsidies and Medicaid growth enrollment and DOC issues and all the other things that being poor exacerbate and being uneducated exacerbate.
Well, next week we'll go back to talking about IU football, and so just to have a week off with the bye week. A number of clean energy jobs, or the number of clean energy jobs in Indiana, that is those that are in sectors such as energy efficiency, wind, solar, electric vehicles, and biofuels, hardly grew last year. Analysts with the nonprofit Environmental Entrepreneurs say the employment figures are likely to fall as the Trump administration revokes clean energy incentives. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports.
Indiana ranks 12th among states for clean energy jobs overall, but those jobs grew by less than 1% last year. And though the state is known for car manufacturing, jobs in electric and hybrid vehicles went down 6%. E2 State Advocacy Director Michaela Preskill says those numbers may bounce back as EV manufacturing plants planned for Indiana get up and running.
I think we're just at the beginning of this transition in Indiana, and we'll continue to see the clean vehicles industry grow.
But Preskill says clean energy jobs are at risk as President Donald Trump works to pull clean energy funding and tax incentives set by the Biden administration. She says since the 2020 slump, clean energy jobs in the U.S. have grown faster than the rest of the economy.
Niki, a year or two ago, clean energy jobs, that was what everybody was buzzing about. Have we seen the high water mark and now it's receding?
They are still growing a little, and I do think the vehicle part will continue to move forward. But obviously, wind, solar, those kind of things, those are on the outs with the current administration. And also, frankly, we've seen example after example of Indiana communities. They don't want those entities or efforts in their area,
and so we're seeing that. And
we're seeing that in these numbers as well.
Jill, is this a branding problem? I bet if you just called it manufacturing instead of green jobs, maybe it'd be a different outcome.
It could be a branding problem, but also I think it's true that there are a finite amount of resources, and clean energy, you know, whether you want to call it clean energy or something else, is still something that we're going to have to look to in the future, you know, whether it be vehicles or electrical grid. I mean, we have to do that. So why not do that in Indiana? And I know a lot of communities here locally that are excited about these jobs, and there's programs that help support them. So.
All right, we'll leave it there. That's Indiana Week in Review for this week. Our panel has been political strategist Elise Shrock, Republican Mike O'Brien, Jill Sheridan, managing editor at WFYI, and Niki Kelly, editor-in-chief of the Indiana Capital Chronicle. I'm Jon Schwantes, host of Indiana Lawmakers, and join us next time because a lot can happen in an Indiana week.
The views expressed are solely those of the panelists.
Indiana Week in Review is produced by WFYI in association with Indiana Public Broadcasting Stations. Additional support is provided by the Indy Chamber.